Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare. Well, I hope you're all in the mood for hearing about Prahlada Maharaj. Yeah. Because that's what we're going to be doing. Hearing about Prahlada Maharaj, or hearing Prahlada Maharaj's very elevated teachings to his classmates. It's okay? Yeah. Okay. We're going to get there. Oh, Bhagavad Gita in your home. Is there a Bhagavad Gita in your home? Bhagavad Gita. Chapter 2, text 54. So continuing, we made it all the way to verse number 3. We're going to cover a few verses this evening. Regardless of the species of life of the soul, the species of life the soul receives, happiness and distress are automatically obtained without endeavor, according to one's past fruitive activities. One cannot avoid happiness or distress under any circumstances. We can die, and then you don't feel anything. These for a few flashes, and then you feel something again. Endeavors merely for sense gratification. This is the translation of verse number 4. Merely for sense gratification or material happiness through economic development are not to be performed, for they result only in a loss of time and energy with no actual profit. If one's endeavors are directed towards Krishna consciousness, one can surely attain the spiritual platform of self-realization. There is no such benefit from engaging oneself in economic development. Now, these are little boys. What do they know about economic development? But he's preparing them because the day will come. So, a little commentary. Many of you know these two terms, sankalpa, vikalpa, accepting and rejecting. So he is rejecting in this particular verse, and then he'll go further and further and elaborate. So I mentioned here denial with the mind because that has very much to do with Krishna's teaching in Bhagavad Gita about pragya, where the mind of someone who is absorbed in Krishna consciousness has these characteristics. And the characteristics of the mind are exhibited by interaction with the external. So this is, don't endeavor mainly for sense gratification. So this is vikalpa. Then comes sankalpa. That's nice too. In the Prabhupada's purport, results in loss of time, it's right in the verse, and energy without any actual profit. Even so-called benefits cannot solve the real problems of life. So-called benefits. The so-called benefits are lures or enticements to go further and further and further and further, like the classic, the mirage in the desert. By definition, the desert is a place where there's no water. And if you think you see water, please understand it's a mirage. A mirage means it looks like water, but it's not water. It's a reflection of the sun on the silicon. It looks like water. So a foolish person may, because of thirst in a desert, go after the water that's not there. And the water keeps going further and further, and they never reach the water because there's no water. Similarly, there's no happiness or benefit to be derived by economic development. Well, wait a minute. If I have some economic development, then I can have stuff. And if I can have stuff, then I can have happiness, right? And without stuff, you can't have happiness. You got to have at least a little stuff. And then when you get a little stuff, it's not enough. A little more, and then a little more, and then next thing you know, you're mad. Chasing more and more. So there's not this. The Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita do not teach, don't take care of the necessities. Please take care of the necessities. But then where's the line? Where's necessity and what's crossing the line of more than what's necessary? And then that's the whole principle of gradual reducing the fever of material existence and increasing the natural health or well-being or normal temperature of life. So necessities, whatever that is, necessities might mean that which you can sustain reasonably. And then that's necessity. Your well-being is basically sustained, and more than that's not necessary. And then, in course of time, the dial moves, and what's necessary by purpose, by tapo divyam, by transcendental austerity, you reduce or regulate at least, and then gradually. So, as opposed to the loss of time and energy with no actual profit. So here's the fellow chasing the carrot. What's the human form of life not to be used for? Happiness, which comes from sense perception. It's not real happiness, it's sense perception, which is available for all species on its own accord. One should not endeavor for such material happiness. Such endeavor drains one's vital force, energy, and lifespan. That's saying the same thing. And what he is saying is very similar to what Rishabdev is saying to his sons in many other places in the Bhagavatam where similar teachings are presented. So that was the prohibition or vikalpa, and here's the injunction, something you're supposed to accept. Here's the Sanskrit of the verse. Therefore, while in material existence, right within the verse, bhavam ashrataha, while in material existence, a person fully competent to distinguish wrong from right, or right from wrong. That's this. In this purport is where Prabhupada takes off on the pragya, because pragya means being able to distinguish right from wrong. A man of discrimination, or from the first verse, with sufficient intelligence. So what's that? That's distinguishing right from wrong. Must endeavor to achieve the highest goal of life. There we go. The highest goal of life. Well, little elevation, that's fine. Highest goal? Perfection. As long as the body is stout and strong and is not embarrassed by dwindling. I've noticed, because of this teachings of Prahlad to his classmates, this phrase, striving for the perfection of life. I'm hearing it because I'm hearing regular recordings of Prabhupada speaking, and he uses the phrase a lot. I mean, a lot. Perfection of life. It's not occasional. I mean, it's more than occasional. Perfection of life. And obviously we're not there, but a goal. And how to achieve that goal. So here's, I do need the verse and purport. Someone has do you have a Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 5? I thought I didn't need it, but I'm going to need it. Is there a Bhagavatam in the house? Where's the... Okay. We have a handheld device that has the purport. Purport. Prahlad certainly heard and recited the topics of politics and economics taught by the teacher, but he understood that political philosophy involves considering someone as a friend and someone else as an enemy, and thus he did not like it. This isn't the right verse, is it? Okay, please correct it. Okay. In the material world, in any form of life, there is some so-called happiness and so-called distress. No one invites distress in order to suffer, but still it comes. Similarly, even if we do not endeavor to obtain the advantages of material happiness, we shall obtain them automatically. This happiness and distress are obtainable in any form of life without endeavor. Thus, there is no need to waste time and energy fighting against distress or working very hard for happiness. Our only business in the human form of life should be to revive our relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and thus become qualified to return home, back to Godhead. Material happiness and distress come as soon as we accept a material body, regardless of what form. We cannot avoid such happiness and distress under any circumstances. The best use of the human life, therefore,
become devotee.
Yeah, lies in reviving our relationship with the Supreme Lord Vishnu. Look for the next one. So, bhavam ashrita, having taken shelter, ashrita, or being situated in material existence. You know, material existence is bhavam, it's misery. But being situated in material existence, achieve the highest goal of life. So, in the purport, somehow we didn't find this in the purport. Okay. Gosh. You have the Bhagavatam. Look at that. I like books. Thank you. Very fancy book, too. Okay. Okay, purport. As stated by Prahlada Maharaj at the beginning of this chapter, Komara Achara Pragya, the word pragya refers to one who is experienced and who can distinguish right from wrong. Such a person, because that's right in the verse, although it's not pragya, they can distinguish right from wrong. They can understand the goal of life. A person fully competent to distinguish right from wrong. Same word. The Sanskrit is Where did the Sanskrit go? The real benefit of life, kshemaya, the real benefit of life, or for the liberation of material bondage. What happened? An intelligent kushalam,
Kushalam.
an intelligent man interested in the ultimate goal of life. So that's what's in the Sanskrit word for word, but the translation reads, while in material existence, bhavam ashritaha, a person fully competent to distinguish wrong from right. So that's the pragya reference in the purport. Now here we go. Person who is experienced and who can distinguish right from wrong. Such a person should not waste his energy and valuable human lifetime simply working like a cat or dog to develop his economic condition. Paragraph. For one word, this is a detail of Sanskrit. There's bhavam ashritam and bhayam ashrita. Accepting the meaning of either of them will bring one to the same conclusion. Bhayam ashrita indicates the materialistic way of life, which is always fearful because at every step there's danger. Materialistic life is full of anxieties and fear. Bhayam. Similarly, accepting the reading of bhavam ashrita, the word bhavam refers to unnecessary trouble and problems. For want of Krishna consciousness, one is put into bhavam, being perpetually embarrassed by birth, death, disease, old age, and disease. Thus, one is surely full of anxieties. So then he goes into the next paragraph is the varnashram system, the gradual elevation. But he's not doing the gradual elevation program. He's doing the distinguishing right from wrong and being very specific. So pragya pratishta, being established in pratishta, being established in understanding right from wrong. So I'm going to read from the reference in Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, text 54 through 58 that elaborate on this some more. This is where sthita pragya phrase is used, or sthita pragyasya, one who is situated and fixed in Krishna consciousness. Arjuna is asking, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged in transcendence? How does he speak? What is his language? How does he sit? And how does he walk? That's verse 54. Pages stuck together. 55. The Blessed Lord said, O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of sense desire, so this is the mind and desires within the mind. He gives up all varieties of sense desire, which arise from mental concoction. And when his mind finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. That was 55. 56. One who is not disturbed in spite of the threefold miseries, who is not elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called the stage of steady mind. Notice emphasis on mind as the indicator of. So with the mind is fixed, then the behaviors outside become fixed. And conversely, if the mind is not fixed, then behaviors are unstable. Text 57. He who is without attachment who does not rejoice, now that means material attachment, who does not rejoice when he obtains good, nor lament when he obtains evil, is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge. So there's knowledge, there's the mind, and there's the senses. Subtle, more subtle, less subtle, and gross. So there's symptoms, lakshana, characteristic, because that's the question. What are the symptoms or characteristics or qualities? And text 58. One who is able to withdraw his senses from sense objects, as the tortoise draws his limbs within the shell, it is to be understood as, he is to be understood as truly situated in knowledge. In the past, my reading of Citta Prajna was primarily focused on intelligence, Citta Prajna, or Citta D, but the Citta D has the following words, Citta D Muni. So a Muni has to be intelligent, but the Muni can also, a feature is they can control their mind, steady mind, Citta D, D-H-I. So that's buddhi, or intelligence. But steady intelligence makes possible the steady mind, or say the verse, unsteady intelligence means the mind is not going to be steady. And how do you get steady intelligence? By having a proper place of shelter. Without proper place of shelter, intelligence is steady, mind isn't steady, the senses aren't steady. You can practice steadiness, but it's not going to become steady without actual shelter, or the strength, the empowerment that comes from that, from a relationship with a qualified person, ultimately qualified Krishna. So this is the definition, back to Prabhupada's words here in Bhagavad Gita, one whose consciousness is merged in transcendence, prajna, one whose consciousness is merged in transcendence, or situated in transcendence. So that's the antidote for bhavam ashrita, is transcendence ashrita, or Krishna, taking full shelter in Krishna. Exactly the message of Bhagavad Gita. Take full shelter of Krishna. And that's the topmost system of yoga. Some appreciation. I plan to do just a few of these, but one can go much further. The teachings, the audience before Bharat Maharaj is a very different audience than the audience of Prahlada Maharaj. The audience of Prahlada Maharaj is little schoolboys, sons of demons. And Rishabdev is the an incarnation, not just a young boy, but he's an incarnation, and one of the avatar forms of the Lord Vishnu. And there's his 100 sons. And they're mature. And he's at the stage that just before he's passing this kingdom on to his sons, he's preparing them and giving them proper instructions. It's not like he didn't give them any instructions before, but it's his parting instructions. Here it is. We've heard this verse. One of the classes that Prabhupada spoke about so many times was this one, 551. And Bhagavad Gita chapter 7, text number 1. He spoke of those two verses like so many times. There's summary verses. So many times. So there's the two parts. There's what not to do and what to do. Same. Vikalpa, sankalpa. My dear boys, of all the living entities who have accepted material bodies in this world, one who has been awarded this human form, Durlabham, rare to achieve. Should not work hard day and night simply for sense gratification, same message, which is available for even dogs and for hogs that eat stool, vid bujamye. One, that's the prohibition, here's the injunction. One should engage in penance and austerity to attain the divine position of devotional service. Devotivyam putrakayena sattvam shudyet. By such activity, one's heart is purified, shudyet. And when one attains this position, he attains eternal blissful life, which is transcendental to material happiness and which continues forever. So to enter into the kingdom of God, or enter into the realm of transcendence, or to enter into the realm of Sat, requires leaving behind Asat and all that seems to be the mirage, or the happiness where there isn't happiness, or the lure of enjoyment is just about to happen. I just have to be very determined and perseverant, and material happiness has that lure, that attraction. So the emphasis here is the teachings of Prahlad and the teachings of Rishabdev, and for that matter, so many other teachings in the Bhagavatam. They're mirror of one another. So now here's a nice series of verses. If one doesn't heed what is being advised by Prahlad, what are the consequences? So just elaborating on the prohibition part. Starting with text number 6. Every human being has a maximum duration of life of 100 years. Of course, it depends on what yuga. But for one who cannot control his senses, half of those years are completely lost, because at night he sleeps for 12 hours. That's a lot of sleep. Being covered by ignorance. Therefore, such a person has a lifetime of only 50 years. And then he does some more math. In the tender age of childhood, text 7, where everyone is bewildered, one passes 10 years playing. That's when you're awake. Of course, anyway. Similarly, in boyhood, engage in sporting and playing, one passes another 10 years. So 50 years plus 10 years plus 10 years. In this way, 20 years are wasted. Similarly, in old age, when one is an invalid, unable to perform even material activities, one passes another 20 years wastefully. Doesn't leave much left. One whose mind and senses are uncontrolled becomes increasingly attached to family life. That's the coming attractions tomorrow. Because of insatiable, lusty desires and very strong illusion, in such a madman's life, the remaining years are also wasted, because even during those years, he cannot engage himself in devotional service. So he's going to drill on this more, the futility, the time-wasting consequence of undue attachment to family life. So now here's a nice little chart. Whoops, go the other direction, please. 100 years maximum. 10 years, 60 years. You didn't even include the 50 years of sleeping. This is a fellow that's not sleeping. Anyway. Huh?
Very depressed.
So, this here's another chart that shows the same thing. 50% ignorance, 20% passion, 30 years remaining wasted attachment in household life. So different pictures of the same misfortune. So take a deep breath. And now, piggybacking on the first verse, Komara acharat pragyo dharman bhagavataniha. Bhagavad Dharma is to be done from the tender age of childhood because, so this is elaboration on not hearing, then there's consequences. And largely people haven't heard, or even if they have heard, they're not truly living their life in the way that's being encouraged by Prahlada or by Rishabdev, Tapo Divyam Putrakaye. Now, Vedic culture encourages at every stage some voluntary exercise of sense control. And of course, material life goes the other direction. You have a life of luxury if you have sense control that doesn't have barriers or limits. But there's consequences. And the valuable human form of life is lost. And who knows what's next? We don't know. I mean, we have something of an idea. We have something of an idea. Little devotional, swalpamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahatovayat. So we do a little bit. And then breathe easily because we have at least that much we know. With exception, but that's the rule. One gets the human form of life, at least minimally human form of life again. And with that human form of life, what are you going to do with human form of life? And how many times? Gosh, how many devotees in Alachua have health problems? Like some really severe health problems. And et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Some comes with old age and some doesn't necessarily come with old age. It's just some chronic health problems. And it gets accelerated with age. It may. Commonly it does. But not. Birth again is not lovely. If there is a way, an intelligent person, sufficiently intelligent person, if there's a way to end suffering, old age and death, we may not want to think about, disease and old age, that we can see. Death, kind of gets out of sight. But death happens, and there's fear of death. And at least my experience, people don't think so much about what's the problem with birth again. But it means, that the experience in the womb, that Prabhupada graphically describes, packed up in an airtight bag and for 9 months. You can't move. Not nice. Of course, the breathing through the lungs is not there, so the airtight bag not the same as just when you can breathe and you're in an airtight bag. You're dead. It's an unpleasant experience. It's maybe an unpleasant experience for the mother. Imagine what the unpleasant experience is for the child in the womb of the mother. Not a pleasant experience. But it's necessary. So if there is the main point that is repeated again and again and again, and the reason for repeating again and again is like you hear it again and again, it's like, I got to pay attention to this because it's really important. It's being repeated again and again. Find, if there is, one should understand the misfortune of taking birth again. And, this is one way of describing it. There's other ways of describing just done. And, there's unwanted things, birth again. There may be wanted things, but there's unwanted things. And then people, take the good with the bad. But if you can not have to take the bad with the good, but transcendental good, and the good is not good. Not what real good is. What's real good? Transcendence. What's that? No touch of contamination of the modes of nature. It's just like this section of the Bhagavatam that we're reading, the Vaikuntha realm. A little sharing, just it's on topic, kind of. I spend a lot of time visiting universities, and many universities I visit more than one time. Because I go to places where there's already a regular program, so I'm going like to support a regular program. So they're, the person that's running the program feels supported, and the students feel they're getting something in addition to what they're regularly getting. So it's part of how I identify which universities to go to. And one of the things that is done after visiting several places is, what are the topics the students want to hear about? So I can identify the topic. And stress, anxiety, managing negative emotions. It's a very popular topic. During this weekend in Gitanagari, the topic was art of meditation, art of mindfulness, overcoming anxiety. Whew. It's meaningful. I mean, there's other things that are meaningful, but that's something that everyone deals with. Stress and anxiety and this and that, and relationships and within themselves and with interpersonal and career and stuff, family. And that's all in the mind. That the point, one of the main points, and in teaching this topic, is reminding people it's in the mind, and it's how you perceive what's in the mind, rather than going into all of that kind of topic. This pragya is where the intelligence can discern both what's right and what's wrong, and part of what's right and what's wrong is go in the direction of the eternal and not go in the direction of chasing after the temporary, and then the misery comes from chasing after the temporary and dealing with the misery that comes from chasing after the temporary, but just doing it again and doing it again like a donkey. Because that's not right. So the sufficiently intelligent person or pragya person, they can discern this from that in the matter of making choices. There's the end. A little cheering, just one little thing. I spent some time today with Brahmatirtha and Hridayananda Maharaj and their, the Bhaktivedanta Institute for Science, whatever they call it these days. And Brahmatirtha shared something with me, two things, well, there are many things, but one of the two things was he's been hearing my classes and he really likes the fact that I didn't speak too much. Because I allowed time for questions. And then he said the other part was the questions were really, for the most part, not 100%, for the most part, very nice. Very thoughtful questions. It's complimenting the audience, but he then referred to himself and said he was requested to speak at something or other, an intellectual audience, something or other. And there were nearly 100 people in the audience. And he was a little intimidated by the audience. But he purposefully spoke 25 minutes and allowed over a half an hour for discussion, because there was, it was a cutoff time of 1 hour. So between 20 and 25 minutes. And then the discussion went on and there was more questions afterwards. And then he didn't know it, but they have a system of grading or evaluating the speaker. And he got the excellent speaker, one of our best speakers. And one of the reasons was because you didn't speak too much. The end. Because you all are good speakers. You're thoughtful. Alachua is a nice place. So you have something you want to? Okay. Over here.
Thank you for your talk. How does one gain more intelligence?
How do you get more intelligence?
Yeah.
Supermarket. Intelligence supermarket. Super soul is the giver of intelligence. So make your super soul connection stronger and you get more intelligence. And how do you make your super soul connection stronger? That's the next question. Reading Bhagavad Gita and following what Bhagavad Gita says and associating with those that have intelligence. You develop qualities. You know the verse from Bhagavad Gita? The verse in Bhagavad Gita where Krishna says that you develop qualities like those with whom you associate. Sangat sanjayate kama. Sangha means association. Sanjayate is addressing him. Sangat sanjayate kama. Kama kora prajayate. So you're in a nice situation. You have a nice ashram situation, a nice leader of your ashram situation, and he's kindly giving, guidance, intelligence. But, the best guidance is the one that's coming from Super Soul. So that, his responsibility is be Super Soul connected. Your responsibility is to be Super Soul connected connected with the one who's Super Soul connected. And then, then Bhagavad Gita, and then apply the message of Bhagavad Gita carefully and consistently. That's devotional service in practice.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for the wonderful class. I was thinking of when you said right and wrong for prajna, is that can also be related to the verse anukulasya sankalpa and pratikulasya varjanam, like in the sense of what is favorable and what is not favorable.
Yes.
And then I was thinking that, like Prabhu was talking about intelligence, but before intelligence, it's the mind itself that's not strong enough.
Or say the point again.
Like I was thinking that the whole idea of not able to get to the right or wrong or doing favorable for Krishna consciousness
is because
all the time is because of mind not being very strong. And
there are different ways of saying the same thing. That's one of the ways of saying. Because I'm editing before you finish your question. I'll let you finish your question.
No, that is the question is, okay, one is intelligence. With intelligence we can get by associating, but then because of that ladder that we see in Bhagavad Gita, like we are still, sometimes our mind is just preventing us to even maybe read Bhagavad Gita or associate with devotees.
Well, okay,
And
but
so how do we...
If the intelligence is made, flip it around the other way. If the intelligence is strong, a symptom that the intelligence is strong is the mind is controlled. I mean, I can read the verses again, but pragya has everything to do with intelligence. It also has everything to do with mind. But there's the symptoms of one whose mind is controlled and their intelligence is properly situated or properly directed. And then the mind is directed because the intelligence directs the mind. So your point is flip it around the other way. If the mind is too weak, then the intelligence isn't going to be able to direct the mind because the mind is too weak. Flip it around the other way. So, therefore, the solution is not just intelligence or mind. The solution is bhakti, because that's what's going to drive the intelligence and the mind. And you know, for us, you and me and all the rest of us, like his question about, you know, how do you strengthen the intelligence? Intelligence comes from supersoul, so bhakti. And that which is, now back to your nice question, you know, it's favorable for devotional service, not favorable for devotional service. And accepting things that are favorable. That's the discernment is necessary, and that's intelligence. So your point is, I may not be able to discern what's to be done, not to be done, because my mind is too weak. Well, you know, you hear it again and hear it again and hear it again. You know what's to be done, what's not to be done. Take minimum the regular principles not to be done. The activities, core activities of bhakti, they're to be done. So intelligence can be there. If intelligence is sufficiently strong, then you go forward. So how does intelligence become sufficiently strong? By connection with Supersoul, by bhakti. And then there's the alignment of all these nice things. He's raising his hand even before we finish. Go ahead.
This pragya, Maharaj, it comes from the first verse. So it says, Komaret acharet pragya.
Yeah.
Dharman Bhagavatam. Komaret, 5 years old. But the translation, what I remember, one who is experienced. If 5 years old, how is experienced?
How do you get what?
How he will be addressed as an experienced man who has a discrimination from right to wrong. Previous life or 5 years, I don't see that many has that.
I don't see many adults that have intelligence.
That's very good. I agree, man.
And it's even more difficult. They think they're intelligent. You know, I'll give two examples, recent examples. When I was in central New Jersey, in one home program, there was a room full of people, but there was one little boy with spectacles sitting right in the front, and he wasn't fidgety. He wasn't being like a little boy. He was just sitting there with absorption. And I know, you know, it was so very noticeable, but his body wasn't moving. He was listening very, very carefully. So, because then they got, you know, attracted, or people were approaching this and that, and the other thing, and the person who was the host had a little conversation with the boy, and the boy he asked the boy, This, boy, maybe 7, 8 years old. What were the three most important things you remember from the class? And boom, boom, boom. Like, I mean, he's young, but he's experienced. Because he's very intelligent. And then there's other examples of, children that are playful and they can't pay attention, but sometimes they can be very attentive. So it varies from person to person. I shared something the other day. I think it's appropriate. I have an older sister who is 83 and her lights are going out. Her body she walks with 2 canes and shuffles. She doesn't walk. And her mind is fine, but her body is falling apart and so forth. And so we had this nice discussion. And I mentioned it, one of the questions she was asking is, what does it say in your teachings about the destiny of the soul after death? She was asking in a very personal way because lights are going out and it's, the days are numbered. And there are other things we talked about, but in the course of it, the door she was opening the door. I didn't have to knock on the door. She was opening the door. And, have you been reading Bhagavad Gita? No. Would you like to? Yes. And she couldn't find it, so I sent her Bhagavad Gita. And then I asked her, would you like somebody to read with? And it can help guide you, somebody proximate that lives in California where you live. And she said, no, it's not the way that I learn. I'm this kind of person that learns this kind of way. And then I said, okay, you're opening the door for me. So what if you read at your leisure, at your pace, in your own way, and then we schedule when you have some topics you want further explained? She said, yes, I like that. Then she went on to say, you are the youngest of the 5, but you are the oldest of the 5. She said, from her vantage point, what it was like when I was growing up, and I'd never heard that one before. But your mannerism was like this, and we could understand. We, the other 4 children, could understand. He's special. And then I became a Hare Krishna guy, and then things happened, and we haven't had too much conversation. Her life got really busy with raising her children and without all that stuff. So, but she's now ready to hear because by age I'm younger, and I didn't have the Bhagavad Gita knowledge when I was little to share with her, but now it's there, and it's she's expecting. We didn't talk about heaven and the kingdom of God. We didn't talk about that. But where's the soul going after the reincarnation? We talked that means not heaven and not the kingdom of God. So when in her next life, she should load up with that which is going to prepare her for her next life. Now, and of course from childhood. Same. If I'm circling back to your question, pragya. Something else.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. It's a parenting question.
Parenting question.
So I'm trying to connect dots with Kaumaram Acharit.
Pragyo.
Yeah. So you said there are kids who want to sit in the front and listen.
Well,
and
some they don't have to sit in the front. Some do. Go ahead.
So, as a parent, should I respect their free will, or should I try
Twist their
to?
arm. Don't twist
Because
their arm.
I've seen so many second generation where even they're growing up in Mayapur but not connected anymore. But I've seen people who just came and just became blossom in the moment. So
I've had similar observations.
what is happening with different people? Reacting.
They're making
different.
choices. To enter a Gurukul Mayapur situation, that's an indication of past free will choices. They wouldn't have those opportunities. And then in Mayapur Gurukul, they're making choices. And there's also association. Bad association can spoil a good child. One rotten apple can spoil a barrel. So association, same sadhu sangha or. So parenting, it's not easy. Try being a spiritual master. Try that one for a while. And what can you do? People are making choices. It's sometimes and sometimes. We had this little discussions. They take their vows and they do well for a while, and then it starts to sag. It happens. So what to do? Parenting is very similar to being, giving care and guidance. It doesn't have to be a guru or a parent. It can be someone that's helping with devotee care. And people struggle. Good people struggle. And from, so parenting is not easy. That's for sure.
So is it right to understand that we'll give whatever foundation we want to give and leave it on Krishna and not have any expectation?
Well, you have to have yes and no. I mean, leave it on Krishna. There's a relationship between you and the child, as the relationship between the teacher and the student, or the guru and disciple. There's a relationship. So it's not just you do the preliminaries, and the result is that you put it in the oven and see what happens. It's an ongoing relationship, and depending upon different times and different circumstances, different individuals, just children, they're sometimes and sometimes. The child needs to feel the unconditional acceptance of the parent. At the same time, the parent, depending upon the circumstance, and depending upon the severity, and depending upon many other variables, there has to be some discipline, and the forced discipline shouldn't be so strident that it results in a pushback. But an undisciplined, just leave it up to Krishna kind of cavalier mood, that's not good parenting. So then it's a relationship, and depending upon the moment and the child and the circumstance and everything, their age and their association and so forth, then decisions need to be made by the parent. But the essence is that the relationship, the child needs to feel accepted, regardless, even if there is some discipline. It's coming from that place, and it coming from that place. Acceptance from the child is because of the consistency of the parent, that's the kind of parent mom and dad are. They're committed, they deeply care about me, not at this extreme or that extreme. But they're flexible. Mom and dad are flexible, and they're interested in my well-being, and they're wise, and they're happy. Being a parent isn't a piece of cake. It's not 1, 2, 3.
Thank you, Maharaj.
And there's different ages and the whole thing. Wait till teenage comes. Yeah. Yeah.
If no question. On the verse third verse,
Yeah.
Sukham Indrikam Datta. On that verse,
Happiness and stress come.
which is already predestined. Now, according to that verse, I don't remember the translation, but what I understand from that verse, that whatever is there, it will manifest.
Could you fix the
Should
volume?
Should
Go ahead.
I not try? It will manifest, then I will see it and then go with it, or
What you try to manifest is service to Krishna. That's the bhakti answer to that question. And then whatever comes is whatever comes. And that's just fine because that's sanctioned by Krishna, so here it comes. So good fortune, ill fortune. And I mean, I'm not abdicating responsibility, but ultimately the sanction of Krishna is going to determine the outcome. I'm making some endeavor, and the result is up to Krishna. My endeavor should be in alignment with what's in accord with what's to be done, what's not to be done. So back to this other question about discernment, intelligence, what's to be done, what's not to be done. And then a mind that follows the intelligence. So we make endeavors, yes, but the endeavor is not happiness as opposed to distress. The endeavor is what's pleasing to Krishna, isn't it? Most of us accept things that are not necessarily pleasant, but because they're pleasing to Krishna, we do them. And it's an important principle. Washing pots. Or like this example of the lady that just gathered a pot of water every day and brought it to the temple and, didn't want recognition, just for the deity. Humble, simple. And it can be, more extravagant. So it's not, can't do extravagant things or can't do prominent things, but that humble mode of service. I think let me just say a couple nice words about Brahmatirtha, because I was just with him, and he was reminding me things that I had forgotten. But when he was reminding, we knew each other very, very well, long ago, like many years ago, in New York, because he was a New Yorker and I was living in the temple, and we had many interactions. And he reminded me of some of those. And, and his mood is and had always been a mode of service. He showed me and I was getting in the car to leave, this little photograph of he's driving Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada's holding a rose in his hand, looking at the window, out the window at the photographer. You can't see him because the rose is blocking Brahmatirtha's face. But that he gave the history, which I didn't remember. But his cousin or an uncle or something had a nice car, and so he was, when driving Prabhupada was required, it was Brahmatirtha to drive Prabhupada. So he got to drive Prabhupada, and that relationship, but it's just menial service. And then the list of things that he described that we did together was, just service and service and service, and I was this and he was that, and we just did service without making the list. And that's still Brahmatirtha. There's all these people in the room. He's built that project that was like crumbling without the detail. It went up and then it went back down. It was crumbling. And he by his mood and his leadership and his personality and his good wife as well. It's this. I mean, two astrophysicists and sitting at the table having prasadam together, and the list of people, Akundati, and he assembled all these people doing all this amazing service. From, he doesn't have a PhD like these people. He just has Krishna consciousness. And there's more. Here's two more. He reminded me of a very, very serious episode that he and I shared together. That was Bali Mardan and Taitareya. There's a history of ISKCON, but he got mixed up with a lady and as a sannyasi, and he went away. And then he shared with me today, he observed how Prabhupada dealt with the situation, and specifically his relationship with Bali Mardan. He apparently was in the room when Prabhupada was speaking to Bali Mardan, and that how Prabhupada dealt with a person that had done all of what he had done, the boo-boo, the transgression. It was such an important lesson for him in his life, as he described. It has helped me in my role as the ISKCON Resolve. The worst thing can happen and you remain undisturbed, and you deal with fairness and gentility and wisdom. And so, from example, this, where do you get intelligence from? From those that have intelligence. And because he was able to receive, and it's been with him. So it's like he's a nice example. The starting point was just he was a humble servant, doing whatever. And now he's doing, still whatever, but, very meaningful whatever. Okay. Yes, I was hoping you would raise your arm. And your hand too. The magic button on the side.
It's on? Oh, okay.
Okay.
I just wanted to add something to that. Satyabhama told me she had been serving in New York during the ill-fated Bali Mardan and his
Era,
wife.
right?
Yeah. And she said when the whole thing was over, Srila Prabhupada thanked the leaders for finally stepping forward and bringing it forward and dealing with it. And he thanked the other devotees for just going ahead and doing their service anyway.
Yeah. So that's in addition. Next time you see Brahmatirtha, share that with him, and he'll probably say, let me tell you more about that. Yeah. But the part that he shared specifically was how Prabhupada personally dealt with Bali Mardan. So he was a way of, he was supporting everybody, nourishing and encouraging and training and guiding and all across the board. It was a difficult period, difficult moment. And I shared with him another one too. Okay. Thank you. That's it. This is Alachua. You have something.
Maharaj, my question is, I don't know the full story of Bali Mardan Prabhu, but for a devotee, there are ups and downs in life, in
Yes.
sadhana,
Yeah.
and in practice. What we should be saying to ourselves, because our intelligence is not fully developed yet. So during those ups and downs, especially downs, because when up comes, it comes with a little bit of pride.
Yeah,
That everything
that's
is
dangerous. That you better, not just as the ups, not just the downs.
Yeah, with pride comes when.
It's very dangerous.
So because there are days that can be really good, then there are days which are really bad. So what should we be meditating on or
Krishna.
thing?
Your Krishna connection.
The connection and the down is
Krishna connection, up Krishna connection.
so sometimes it's the activities that we relate to as success. Like for example, if
I'm familiar with the territory, but that's not the success. I mean, a mature devotee understands what I just said. And as each one of us becomes more mature, it becomes very clear. It's not, material success. It's the relationship with Krishna. And it's displayed by one's character. Just like these examples of Sthita Pragya. I didn't read the purports, but it's a nice set of verses. Chapter 2, text 54 to 58. And there's symptoms, lakshana, characteristics. And they're largely internal, but then they manifest externally as well. But it's, it's resting upon the internal, not just tightening the screws and nuts and bolts. But it's the internal absorption in transcendence. So that gets back to your question. That's what we do. And as you practice that and practice that and practice that, it becomes, there's more balance, or there's more ballast. When the ship is crossing the sea, sometimes it's very calm, and sometimes it's wavy, and sometimes it's stormy, and sometimes maybe the ship is going to sink. But there has to be, to help maintain stability, some ballast. And that ballast is the place of shelter. So practice it now, and whether it's this time or that time, this duality, that duality feature. And so it's with you always. That place of shelter is never lost, even in the midst of the greatest calamity, another place of Bhagavad Gita. Krishna speak like that.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Prabhupada Swami Maharaj ki jai. Vishnu Vrinda ki jai. Prabhupada.